Star Wars 7x7 episode 2028. Today it is a Jedi business episode. We're going to look at the box office numbers from the 5th weekend of the release of Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. Punch it. Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7x7. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. So here we are. One of the things that did happen that we talked about last week is that Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker has crossed the 1 billion mark at the global box office, which is rather a remarkable thing. Not a lot of movies get to do that. And at the moment, it looks like it is definitely going to surpass the numbers for Rogue One at the box office, but not The Last Jedi. So here's where we're at right now. The Rise of Skywalker is just about at 495 million in the domestic box office and about 539 million globally. That is not in North America. And so its overall total is $1.026 billion. So $1 billion and another 26 million. It's going to have to get another 30 million, I think it is, in order to surpass Rogue One overall. And it's going to have to get another 38 million specifically to surpass Rogue One at the domestic box office. But one of the levels it's achieved is the top 15 of domestic box office grossers. So Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker is now in 15th place as a movie earning money at the domestic box office. Rogue One is in 13th place, so it's got a little bit of a climb. But even if it gets past Rogue One, I think it's only another 5 million to then pass The Dark Knight for 12th place. But it would have to crack 600 million domestic in order to get into the top 10 of all-time domestic earners. And the Department of Corrections is chiming in. I said 539 million at the global box office, but it's actually 534 million, so my apologies for that. So for the weekend itself, it ended in 5th place, and it made, 10.6 million at the domestic box office and 10.9 million outside of North America. So pretty solid, decent numbers. And number one was actually Bad Boys for Life. So it ended up getting a tremendous review and tremendous audience score and did fantastically well. 1917, which knocked The Rise of Skywalker out of the top spot in the box office, ended up in 2nd place, getting knocked out themselves by Bad Boys for Life. We have The Rise of Skywalker in 5th place overall. Jumanji was in 4th place, and now I'm going to have to pause this and go look to see what was actually in 3rd place. Oh, it was Doolittle. That was it. Anyway, so Doolittle's not getting good reviews, and apparently their box office scores are or their box office numbers are making it look like that $175 million budget is going to be tough to get to. So that's too bad for Robert Downey Jr., who is the Dr. Doolittle for a new generation. But if the movie isn't going to do all that well, then it's probably going to be a one and done until they reboot that franchise. I don't know, a good 5-6 years from now, something like that. But it is interesting in its way that the top 5 movies in the box office, 4 of them rely on intellectual property that was already previously established. I mean, the Bad Boys movies, there were only 2 Bad Boys movies, and, it's not like they were necessarily on lunch boxes or anything like that. It wasn't that kind of movie, but at this rate, they're probably going to start making Funko Pops of the Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. So, it's an interesting time for revamping intellectual property. Jumanji obviously is the 3rd Jumanji movie that they've made. The Rise of Skywalker naturally is a part of an intellectual property that's been around for 4 decades. And the Doolittle thing, I guess you could say it was sort of a previous IP with Eddie Murphy's Dr. Doolittle movies, and obviously the character has existed for quite a long time. The 1917 movie is the only one that is in the top 5 that isn't based on pre-existing intellectual property. But what's next for The Rise of Skywalker in theaters? Well, we'll talk about that right after the break. Stay tuned.
Hey Rebel Rouser, I've made some changes to the asteroid belt level at patreon.com/SW7X7, and they are all with sponsors in mind. So if you want to get the word out about your business, your product, your service to a dedicated Star Wars audience, then please check out patreon.com/SW7X7 and look for the asteroid belt level for details. Again, that's patreon.com/SW7X7.
Welcome back. All right, so a couple of the things that we can expect to happen with the Rise of Skywalker, I've already mentioned. One of them is that it's going to cross 500 million domestically, and probably sometime this week, probably before the weekend itself, before next weekend. So that's number one. Number two, depending on how things go over the next 7 days, it's possible that by the end of next weekend, The Rise of Skywalker will have surpassed the totals of Rogue One, a Star Wars story. So that one, that one's bound to happen. It's just a matter of when. But complicating the situation is the third thing that's going to be happening, which has already started, and that is that The Rise of Skywalker is starting to be in fewer and fewer theaters. So it was in something like 4,300 or 4,200 theaters, but it lost 1,200 theaters this past weekend, and so it was only in just over 3,000 theaters. And so obviously in fewer theaters is because that that means it's not making as much money as, say, something else that a movie theater could put on a particular screen. But because of that, like that consolidation, the amounts are continuing downward, as happens with every single movie, but it just, starts to be, the first of the final footsteps. As soon as we start losing theaters, the numbers start going down, and then you lose more theaters, and the numbers go down even further. And so we are on that march to the end of The Rise of Skywalker's showing in theaters. But it'll definitely surpass Rogue One. Won't surpass The Last Jedi, but, still, $1 billion is pretty darn good. Anyway, that is as far as we're going to look at the box office numbers for The Rise of Skywalker, and that is going to do it for today's episode of the show. Thank you so much for joining me for it, as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
Star Wars 7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2020 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.